We live in a world of duality, but that duality is really the ultimate paradox. So we have the right, we have the left, we have up, we have down, we have inside and outside. We have light, we have darkness, we have good, and we have evil. And of course, we're pulled. Some people are pulled to the right. That's their identity in politics. Some to the left, and that's their identity. Some are spiritualists and are up. Others are materialists and they're down. Some people are more inward, and some people are more outward, showy, right? So on and so forth. And we live in a world that says, well, it's all good. Do your thing. You're an outward person, you're more an inward person, you're whatever it is. Just be true to yourself. But if there's a duality in the world, first of all, and in the world, and I have a duality in me, how am I being true to myself if there is that duality in me? I have my inward self, I have my outward self, I have my left-leaning, right-leaning self, and the left-leaning self, right? So am I just a hodgepodge of different kinds of expressions? And I'm like, sometimes I'm moved by the light in my life, and sometimes darkness is very moving. And furthermore, who am I really? Because we've got so many different kinds of self-expressions and duality of life. Who's the real me? Please stand up. And to take it a step further, since I'm created in the image of God, so what does it mean about God? Is it also duality? How do we understand that? What kind of duality is in creation? Well, seemingly there is. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad, Tzich, and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We'll conclude today chapter 4, Shayich Emunah, and understanding the power of the Creator within creation. And we're dealing with God having the name Havaya and God having the name Elohim. On the right side is God Havaya, the Tetragrammaton, which is God's kindness that he bestows upon us. That kindness is to no end, no limitation in the kindness. Oh, trying to find the right Shem Havaya. That's the way it's pronounced inside there. That's on the right side. On the left side was Shem Elohim, which is Gevura, refrain, holding back. Holding back on what? God's kindness. Because God's kindness is infinite, without restriction. which, by the way, reflects in us giving indiscriminately. Not giving because, oh, I like you, so I'm giving you. So that's not really giving. That's not true giving. True giving is without boundaries. Now, what does it mean? Does it mean you gave everything? It means not based on based on you, based on the recipient. What their needs are ultimately would be in that respect. But going too far with that. Let's leave it now the way it is in the divine. God creating, excuse me, with Shema Vaya would be an infinite form of giving. So there's a refrain, there's a hold back. That's Shem Elohim. Who, excuse me, excuse my spring allergies. So that's holding back on that divine light. Um, Holding back on that divine light. So therefore, there would be discriminating or discriminate rather, there are discriminant beings that a cup is created, an animate object, and animals created, humans created, because holding back the light, holding back that power of shame, God's kindness that is indiscriminate, which means would create infinite beings that are totally bound up in one with God, like the ray of light within the sun, but that we should sense our independence is only because of Shem Elohim. Metaphorically, that's like the sheath that covers over the sun, that therefore the sun doesn't consume us in its great heat. Okay? So, what can come out of this, as a review of what we learned, is that, there's God, and he's got, his right hand in giving and his left hand holding back. So it's not an infinite form of giving now. Hand is limited to begin with. So of course it's not a good metaphor. Imagine God in his giving infinitely. And then there's another element of God that is holding back, contracting, hiding that light. Now, the problem with that metaphor is it could conjure up a sense that God is not only hiding his, or sorry, rather that what he creates of us is independent people. And that's how we probably think of it. God's looking and he's seeing that we're separate from him. And okay, let's see what path little Yankel's going to choose today. Is he going to do the mitzvah? Is he not going to do the mitzvah? Well, he does the mitzvah, then he'll have a wonderful day. He chooses the opposite. Yeah, it won't be such a great day, right? That's a possibility. But that, of course, is a mistake because nothing's separate from God. So even though there's a concealment, it's not affecting God that we are independent entities from God, that he has ultimate control on, and so on. That is a way we might construe from this. So came the Mikubalim, the the Kabbalists and Hasidus comes to explain, there's another metaphor in how we can bring this out, and that is called light and vessel. Light is indiscriminate, and we see light as indiscriminate, right? The light of the sun or light of, of a light bulb. It goes everywhere equally, right? The sun doesn't shine in one window more than another window that are all facing in the same direction, same size, right? Unless you put something there like a curtain that shields it. Oh, right. But the sun shines everywhere for everyone, equally, if you will. So there's light, that is the infinite chesed, giving of God, right hand, the tetragrammaton, Shemavaya, and then there's vessel that contains the light. What does the vessel do? It creates a parameter. It's not only merely concealing the light and what's in it, right? You don't see what's in it, right? When you look at the cup, you don't see what's in it. Guess what's in here? So now the vessel is an active role in creating the parameter for the light, the distinctiveness of the created being. So now it's different, right? So those are, and so it's not just merely God's names, not really just right and left, if you will, but on a deeper level, it's vessel and light, and they come together as one. That's the key over here. You might think that there's a duality in the way God is creating, because that's how we perceive it. But in truth, it's not. It's light and vessel that come together in one, one entity, right? So therefore, God's not hiding from himself because it's one entity. When you think about different names of God, different powers of God, so that power may be, you may construe it as thinking that, the power of refrain is only holding back the light. But it's, first of all, not an active part in creation. It's just contracting the light, concealing it, firstly. And secondly, you might also misconstrue from there is that from God's perspective, we are independent individuals. But when we understand that it's light and vessel that come together as one, not two different powers, but it's one entity that's coming from God, right? Just like what is contained in the cup and the cup, it's one entity. Vessel and light, one entity, right? And not only it's one entity, but the cup has an active role in creating the reality of this one entity. It's giving a parameter, it's giving a limitation, right? It's not just holding back the light, it's giving definition to the light, right? So that metaphor it makes it more clear that the source of creation is not duality, not two names of God, or even light and vessel that are coming together. It's two components that are coming together as one, right? And what is the vessel? Is the utterance of God that he creates with his word, right? The 10 utterance of God, the substitution transposition, that's a life force that creates, a stone that gives a much more definitive parameter to its life force and hides it more so. It's like this cup that even has a cover on it. And a cover, you could have a plastic clear cover that, that gives you a capability to see what's inside, or completely dark cover. The dark cover, you don't see what's inside. That's like a rock that was produced by the light inside, that gave a definition by the vessel that's containing the light. It's got a dark cover on it. That's a rock, a hard rock, inanimate. Now it's a clearer cover, but still a cover. A little not so clear, not perfectly clear, but not translucent exactly, but it's not a color. It's colorless, but somewhat not so clear exactly what it is. Oh, that's an animal that was created. More light, less vessel, if you will. But what is a vessel? The word of God that's animating, the letters that are the words. Now take away completely, no cover. Oh, human being. That was my metaphor, by the way. But just to give an idea. Now, in the utterance that we're speaking about, right, that is the vessel that gives definition. So specifically, there's 5 degrees of gvura, of this refrain, of this holding back, giving definition, a limitation to what is contained, the light within. And that's expressed in the language of the words. There's 5 letters that are end letters. You have the final mem, the final long nun. You have the tzaddik, the final tzaddik, the final pei, and the final and the long chaf. They're end letters only, because what does an end letter do? The end of the word, right? The finale, the parameter, the perimeter of it. That's vessel. Also 5 forms of gvura, of limitation, of refrain, of the power of God in this act of, limiting and concealing. It's limiting and concealing of the light. It's also 5 forms of articulation of letters, right? You need your lips for a mem. You need your teeth for a shin. You need your tongue for a lamed. You need your guttural sound for a ches, and for the palate, aleph, I think, if I recall. That's how all the letters are subdivided into those 5 categories, right? In order to give them a distinctiveness that, the ches is pronounced differently than the pei with your lips, right? And so on and so forth. That's all bringing out, which is beautiful, how you see in every component in the language, in the expression of language, in the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, expressing this idea of that gvura has 5 degrees of limitation, 5 restraining forces, as expressed as I just expressed it, right? Now, where does this all come from? In the divine order, now we're going to get into some Hasidic Kabbalistic geography over here. So, to just bring out that this is one entity, that is the power of God in creation, as opposed to the way we may have thought it before, which it was incorrect to think it that way, but this metaphor just brings it up more precisely as the power of God's name, Havaya, and God's, right, on the right, Chesed, and God's power of refrain, and of limitation, of concealment, of Gvura on the left, Shem Elohim, the name of Elohim, of God's name, right? So you might have a sense of duality there that would be a mistake, but this just brings it out more clearly. And the root source of this is in the world, in a place called Atik Yoimin. There's a spiritual level of Keser, of crown, that transcends the worlds, including and transcends the world of Atzilus, which is God's emanation, beyond God even emanating, let alone creation. Beyond that. And in that you have Chesed, you have Gvura in Atik, which is the source for the vessel for the letters that are limiters and concealers as a result. Limitation conceals. And it's also the chesed that's in this letter of Keser of Atik Yemin that is there together. And it's really coming from one source. So it's one entity from God in the act of creation. And therefore, ultimately, in God, in his act of creating, he's not concealing from himself anything, only from our perspective. So from our perspective, we feel as independent entities. But from God's perspective, in the act of creation that's coming from God, right? He is that source in the divine. They're really coming together as one. Even though, in the metaphor here, it's a bit, it's a cup with what's inside the cup, right? It's light and vessel coming together, contained as one. But, you might think them as two separate things. And light is different than vessel, of course. Light is the source of life. Vessel is the perimeter, and therefore gives definition to the life, as we explained, right? Put a color plastic cover over here, really concealing it. And through the letters that give definition and limitation and concealment of the life force, it's creating a stone. Less concealment, creating, or no cover, scuffing a human being, and so on. I hope that was clear. But the point over here is that we should understand that from our perspective, we feel our independence. But in fact, from God's perspective, we're not. And from truth, we're not. In truth, we're not. We feel it based on what we just learned, understanding how this came about. The idea of vessel, the idea of Gevura, the idea of Shem Elohim, the name of Elohim in God, right? And we had the many metaphors of the sheath it covers over. We have the cup that, the vessel that contains and delimits and conceals, and so on and so forth. Wow, we get that, folks. You think about it, it's like awesome to appreciate and to know God in creation. This is what we believe in. Any questions? Any comments? Just so you know, we're at 99% in our Chabad Lifeline campaign. I thank everybody. Many of you participated. Thank you very much. You still have last opportunity so we can get to 100%. Unbelievable. Every cent adds up. Every dollar adds up. I don't see any questions. Davida, how does the vessel relate to our vessel that we open to fill with blessings that have simcha, amuna, and mitzvah? What do you mean by your vessel? Everything in creation has body and soul to it. A stone has a soul to it. Inanimate, it's a very, as we just explained, the soul is the light, right? The body is the vessel, right? So I'm not, what do you mean your vessel? In what respect? Everything has a body and soul. Everything has a vessel and a light to it. So in reference to what? To yourself as a person? Well, on one level, your vessel is your body that is a container for that contains your soul. Just like this is a vessel that contains the coffee that I once had in it. A little bit left. A little light left, right? Oh, okay. So, okay. So, for example, okay, I understand Davita's question. I think I understand at least. So, we're told that we should make a vessel for God's blessing, make a container, and in the end, God's going to pour into our container. So, for example, um, work. So, God can give you livelihood, He can give you money. If you don't go to work, right, then right, God helps those who help themselves, as the saying goes, and has make a vessel that God could fill it. In the end, God's filling it, right? Because what's giving life is the light. That's God's light. God's container, and this is from God's perspective, right? God has a container that's delimiting it, concealing it, as we just explained. So likewise, we, in the things we do what you got to do, create a vessel, and God will fill it with the light of God. So, that brings our vessel that we make is a limited form of engagement, of doing something, right? Of what it is that we need to do. And God then fills it with His life force to give us. That's the idea. So, it's a similar idea here. If we have the life force is the light that God will put into the vessel. The difference is over here, we're creating the vessel and God's giving the light, right? Excellent. Thank you for that. All right, folks. Learn some Rambam. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Tzich and Kadesh. Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share